Welcome to From Potential to Powerhouse, Success Secrets from Female Leaders, where female trailblazers share their journeys and the aha moments that made all the difference. With your host, serial entrepreneur and trailblazer herself, Tracy Holland.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me. It's Tracy Holland here from Potential to Powerhouse,
where we talk to extraordinary women entrepreneurs and extraordinary women CEOs and business leaders on their path to success and building their own business and career path. Today, we'll be talking to Jennifer Zuccarini, who's the founder of the luxury lingerie and ready-to-wear brand Fleur du Mal. I'm talking feminine, chic, powerful. This brand embodies a woman's strength, a woman's confidence, and her sexuality. Jennifer is such a unique entrepreneur for a series of reasons you'll hear. She has spent her career building a business, but she did spend several years in corporate, as she'll share, taking a day-to-day paycheck and having all the safety net of being an executive at Victoria's Secret. In 2005, she co-founded a business that failed, and then she relaunched her business in 2012, which is Fleur du Mal, which has become an unparalleled success. And what I think I love so much about Jennifer is she embodies femininity and she embodies that powerhouse spirit, much like many of the women that I've had the privilege of talking to on the podcast. And what you're going to find is that it's not always just an easy ticket to success. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to From Potential to Powerhouse. I'm so thrilled to have you here today. I can't wait for you to share your vision of Fleur du Mal, which is one of the sexiest lingerie businesses and brands that I know of. And you are the visionary, you're the founder, and you are the CEO.
That's right.
And so I think for those who are listening today, can you share who Fleur du Mal is as a brand? If you were to describe her as her own brand, what would you describe her as?
Yes. So, well, thank you for having me on the show. Very excited to be here today. When I was imagining Fleur du Mal, I was really inspired by this vision I had for a woman who is the Fleur woman. And it's somebody who's powerful, but also is not afraid to embrace her femininity and sexuality. And I think that that's what's interesting for me. It's that those two things do not have to be mutually exclusive, that you can be powerful and also want to be sexy. So that was really the inspiration. And then as a brand, you know, we explore topics like desire, intimacy, sexuality, all of those things. So it's evolved from there.
So for those who are listening today, if you want to be inspired while we have this conversation, pop onto your phone and look at your Instagram and type in Fleur, FLEURDUMAL. And I think what I was so inspired by Jennifer and was lucky to know you through mutual friends was that you're such a creative visionary, but you are such a powerhouse entrepreneur and have built this incredible business. You have a board that is unparalleled, really, in the world of heavy hitting board members. And so I want to dive into that a little bit. But I think what I was so enthralled with was I want to look like the women that you have in your Instagram posts. I mean, and I feel like she represents and embodies the sexiest, most glamorous, gorgeous woman out there with a body to kill, but also just, you know, empowered and sexy. So
yeah, absolutely. We always think about it from the woman's point of view. I mean, well, I really couldn't have another point of view other than that. But I love for our imagery to position the woman as in a position of control in every scenario. So I think that really resonates.
It does. And through your imagery, it resonates. So she feels to me like this super sexy, empowered woman who just embodies everything that every woman who's very empowered and driven wants to be in the bedroom and wants to maybe be under her suit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's our woman.
That's our woman. So Jennifer, as far as you starting this business, this is now your second company, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you started off, it looks like you were born in Toronto and then you moved to New York and you were a student at the Fashion Institute of Technology and you studied fashion design.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know you were going to become a designer?
I did. I actually realized I wanted to become a designer when I was 8 years old. And from that time, I got my mom to get me a sewing machine. I took sewing lessons. I used to sketch. So I was very interested in fashion from a young age. And that was I just knew that's what I wanted to do. Then years later.
Were you
Hmm?
as a kid, were you an entrepreneur at that point, or do you think you were more of a creative designer?
I would say probably a little bit of both. I mean, I would say my mother's parenting style was very like hands off in a way. So from a young age, I really did a lot of things on my own. I was always, curious as a kid, and I think I was someone who was very comfortable doing my own thing, even from a young age. And, even deciding that when I was 8 that I wanted to be in fashion. And then I was very proactive to get, the sewing machine and the lessons and to do all of these things. And I wasn't interested in a lot of extracurricular things, but when I found an interest, I really, I guess, went after it.
And when you decided at one point to leave Toronto, was that supported by the fam? Did they think this was a good idea, or were you the rebel in the family a bit?
Well, my sister, Janet, who's an entrepreneur, she's 10 years older than me. When I was that age, when I was 8, she was 18. She moved to Italy. She moved to Rome, and she lived there for 9 years, 10 years. So when I was that age, I thought I was going to move to Europe. That's just what I thought I would do because my sister did that. So, I think my parents were always anticipating that I would move away. Of course, my father was an entrepreneur. He brought the first espresso machine to Canada in 1954. So all he wanted was for all of us to take over his business. So for that reason, he was, a little disappointed that I didn't want to do that. But no, they weren't really surprised when I moved.
What's interesting is a lot of the women entrepreneurs that I speak to who are super successful have this really interesting dynamic with their father, where they're just loved on and doted or told they can do anything. Did you have a similar experience, or what was that like?
I would say, my father he was Italian, born, like he didn't move to Canada till he was in his 30s, and a different generation. So for him, he was really a provider and somebody who, he wasn't someone who like played with us or spent time with us in that way. He was more about work and about, even all of us as kids had to work in our family's business. It was like not a choice. But I feel that he always encouraged us to do our own thing, to start our own businesses. He was like, why would you ever want to work for somebody? Don't ever do that. He thought that would be the worst decision in the world. So he was very much taught all of us, and because he didn't have a son and he really wanted boys, and he got 3 girls, he treated us more like boys probably. I mean, he was like, pick that up and go do this, like get to work. We were not treated like, no.
Yeah, I was the same. My name was Michael for 3 days. And when I came out of the womb, they thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have a girl's name. So I had 3 days without a name. General Hospital had a baby named Tracy at the same day I was born. So they thought Tracy sounds like a reasonable name.
Oh my God,
but I was literally treated like a boy too, and that's interesting because it sounds like he was an entrepreneur and taught you the sense of independence and being self-assured. And
absolutely. Yes.
So in your 20s, did you end up going to Europe when you're 18?
I didn't. When I was 18, 19, I was thinking about moving to Italy to study fashion design. And I was trying to get my father, because my father had become a Canadian citizen, to become an Italian citizen again so I could get my dual citizenship. And at some point, but actually my father was at that time diagnosed with leukemia, and he wasn't doing so well. So I made a decision not to move that far away and to be a little bit closer. And, you know, I never thought about moving to Montreal. I did think about moving to New York, but my path just kind of led me there. And it was the right decision to be closer at that time.
And how old were you when you started your first business?
I was 29.
And that was after a stint at Victoria's Secret, where you learned as much as you possibly could?
Victoria's Secret was actually in the middle. So I was in school for a while because I was in university in Montreal, and I was studying fine arts and art history. And I did that for 4 years. And then I moved to New York and studied fashion design. So when I graduated, I worked for designers in New York and just got some experience. And then a couple of years later, started Kiki de Montparnasse with co-founders. So I was, 29. And that was my first experience, you know, truly building a brand from scratch. And that was sort of I think a big moment in my career, obviously, because when we launched, it was, you know, really well received and tons of press and every celebrity shopping there. And it was the first time I kind of had put myself out there in terms of my work. So that was, and, you know, before that, I was never thinking about designing lingerie ever. It was a personal passion of mine. I loved it, but I wanted to design just clothing. And when that opportunity came around with Kiki, it just, you know, it was something that just happened. And I realized it just clicked it was like what I was meant to do.
And what happened with that business?
Well, while I was there, I was approached by Victoria's Secret. There were a lot of things happening, complicated things happening between the partners. We were 3 co-founders. One of the other people in the business was my partner at the time, who I was like my boyfriend at the time. And he had had a big falling out with our 3rd co-founder. It was just, you know, messy, the whole thing. I kind of wanted to leave. And I was approached by Victoria's Secret. My initial response was absolutely not. That's not what I want to do. I like luxury, you know. I was used to making everything in New York, and I was like, that's not for me. I don't know that customer. And then after meeting with them probably 10 times, I really felt, I was like, you know, this is probably the exact thing I should be doing. It's the opposite of what I had done. It was a chance to work for, at that time, a $6 billion company, travel all over the world, you know, make great sourcing connections in Asia, work in a corporate environment. You know, I'd never worked anywhere corporate. I didn't know if I'd even fit into that type of culture. So it was just a great learning experience, and I loved it. I actually loved it.
So in terms of, I think, you know, a lot of, for the entrepreneurs who are listening right now, one of the things that I would say is so critical is to make sure you understand your partnership agreement, your operating agreement, your exit strategy, because time is money, right? And so it sounds like with Kiki, that your first business that you were building, you put a lot of heart and soul into it. And then for a whole series of reasons that you could never have imagined, you have an unraveling of a partnership arrangement. And it's like, now what?
Yes. I didn't protect myself. I didn't invest in getting the advice that I needed at the start of that deal. I didn't worry about it at that time.
But in hindsight, are you grateful for the experience? Did you learn what not to do based on that?
100%. I don't regret anything, because even after that, you know, the company lasted for a few more years, but ultimately they shuttered the company, and then they sold it to somebody else who relaunched it. So even if I had negotiated something different, there would have been no outcome.
Right.
Based on what happened.
And so what did you learn in Victoria's Secret taking a corporate gig? What was that like? Your first paycheck and your first 401k investment
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
your health
I was like,
insurance and your
I was like, what?
your
Yeah,
PTO
PTO.
form.
Yeah. I was like, can you explain to me the restricted stock again? Like, yeah, it was all of that. It was, I actually, as I said, I loved it because when you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, as you know, everything rests on your shoulders, right? Like if something, I would take everything on. If something, you feel that you're responsible for the whole company because you could bring the whole thing down by making a series of bad decisions. So one thing I loved about going to Victoria's Secret was, it's a huge corporation. There's so many departments. I had so much support. I could really focus on what I had to do. And, there was no way that I was going to take that whole company down. Like I could make it better, but I wasn't bringing it down. So
Right.
there was something, I think, liberating about that. And, I don't know, I weirdly liked the structure because I'd never had structure like that of every day. I mean, this is also what I got tired of there, but in the beginning it was a novelty. I liked every minute of my day was completely scheduled.
I bet.
And I knew where I was going to be months in advance. The whole calendar was locked down and controlled by a whole other team.
Yeah.
And when you're an entrepreneur, you have to think every day, where am I going to spend my time? And it's stressful.
Yeah. And I always say to entrepreneurs, I feel like we're always 3 decisions away from cratering our entire business.
Yeah.
Really. Right.
Yes.
I mean, I've been doing this for 11 years with Hatch Beauty. And I always think, it's literally 3 bad, critical error decisions. Thankfully, that's never happened. But it feels that way.
Yes. And that's a lot of pressure.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure. So I enjoyed that. And I loved working. I liked working cross-functionally and having all these different teams and traveling a lot. There were so many perks working there as well at that time, just flying private to Paris to go shopping all day and have a driver and stay at Le Maurice. And I really enjoyed the perks because I had been struggling for so many years.
And were you single at that time or were you married?
I was single.
Okay. So yeah, that's actually extra fun.
It was extra fun.
Yeah, we get you. And then what happened? How did you pivot to Fleur du Mal?
So when I accepted the position at Victoria's Secret, I knew I was going to do my own thing again. There was no question in my mind that that's what I was going to do. But I thought, let me do this for 2 years and just get all that experience. And then I'll go out and raise money and I'll be able to say, look, I created this beautiful luxury company. And then I worked for the biggest lingerie brand in the world. This is going to look much better for me to eventually go fundraise. So I ended up staying for 4 years, which was longer than I, initially thought I would. But the last year, I knew I had to make a change. I was a little comfortable there. You also have stock that's vesting every 3 months. And it really, you're always looking at that, like, oh, in 3 months, I'm going to get this. In 3 months, I'll wait another 3 months. It keeps people there. So it's motivating. But eventually I decided I'm going to spend my nights and weekends working on a business plan. I'm going to start conceptualizing what this is going to be. And then I just started casually taking it to people that I trust, that I'm close to, that I trust, showing them what I was thinking. And I had a couple of people say, if you decide to do this, I would invest in you. And as soon as I had that, then it gave me the confidence to really make the move and to leave Victoria's Secret, which I did.
Well, and this is such an important point because I get so many inbound questions from entrepreneurs or women who want to become entrepreneurs. And they say, how do you first get started? How do you go without a paycheck? How do you launch your business? How do you have income in your first year? And I always talk about moonlighting to start your business.
Yeah.
Having a day job, taking a paycheck, and then doing nights and weekends in order to give yourself the flexibility to have a business plan and have an investable plan takes time.
Does much longer than I thought. I was like, oh, I'll do the business plan in a month or two. And no, it took me 4 months, 5 months to really get it to a place where I felt like I could even present it to somebody. And I think putting in the work and building the models and understanding what you're really going to have to do to launch a business is so important. I don't know how else you could possibly do it. I also save money. I was fortunate enough to, put money away from my job and save so I could eventually leave and have that gap.
And did you have a year's worth of salary saved, or how
Yeah.
were you calculating? Okay. And you were
Even more.
single at the time, so you didn't have a dual income.
No.
Right. So I think for those listening who are wondering, how do you start? Because that was the same thing for me, is you start by doing exactly what Jennifer's describing. You work, and then you borrow time in your personal time when everyone else is watching Netflix
Yes.
or doing fun things. You're hunkered down, banging out the plan.
Exactly. I also had to make a decision in my day job, in my career, my profession, to say, I gave my all at Victoria's Secret as well. I was working long hours. At some point I had to say, I'm going to do my best, but I have to put limits on the time that I'm spending there because I need to work on my own thing. So I had to carve out, I'm going to stop working at 6 or 7 in the evening, and I'm going to dedicate Saturday to this.
And for those who are listening that are trying to decide whether they should leave their day job that's secure with a paycheck and leave to go start their own business, I just want to jump ahead for a second before we go back and ask you the question, knowing what you know this minute today, are you glad you made that choice to leave your high-paying corporate job to start your own company and build your own business?
Absolutely. I couldn't, if I didn't, I would have had regrets about it. It would have been in my mind always. And I would have felt like I should have done it and I didn't. There was no way I couldn't have at least tried. But I do think back sometimes at maybe things I gave up by making this choice.
Sure.
Security,
Sure.
Many things.
Well, and so one of the things that I found so impressive, I mean, not only are you so impressive, but in your business that you've built, but I think what you're saying right now that's just resonated the first time I spoke to you was when you have people who say, I want to invest in you. So when you're ready to launch this brand, let me know because I'm in. I think it would be helpful for those listening for you to share a little bit about that process and who do you have on your board? Who are your investors?
Yes. Well, early days, I really started with people in my network. And the first people that I spoke to, I wasn't necessarily pitching the business to them to invest. I more went to people for feedback. And I think that's a really good thing to do because sometimes it's hard to go to people that you're friends with and ask for money. It's a very awkward thing to do, but you can always share your ideas and get their feedback. And I had a lot of people say that they wanted to invest just from that conversation. And it never really felt like a hard pitch. And then once so my first investors were people that I'm friends with, and then my husband at that time, he wasn't we were dating, my husband became an investor, a couple of my close friends. And then I just started through my network meeting with more and more people. And, I was lucky enough to have, through a friend I met, David Schiffman, who was the former head of retail for Goldman Sachs. And he's amazing and one of our best advisors. I went to him not to pitch, just to say, like, this is what I'm doing. And he said, well, I want to invest. And I was blown away and so happy. And when you start getting people like that on board, then other people are interested as well.
And if David's listening, he is such a baller. I mean, what a big deal that is. Like, I got tingles when you first told me that. So I'm like, okay. And then what? I'm dying to hear what happened after that.
And then, it just kind of cascaded from there. I was constantly, as you know, with fundraising, I was just taking meetings nonstop. People would connect me to other investors. And, a lot of people say no. A lot of people say no. You just have to keep getting out there. And then through my network, I connected with Tory Burch. And she ended up investing with her brother, which was major. That was a really big deal at that time. And that was something that it took some time. We worked on that for a while. It wasn't an immediate, yes, I want to invest in you. It took a few rounds of speaking to them. And then again, then you're like, well, Tory Burch is an investor and this other person, like it starts building momentum. And then, a friend of mine, John Oranger, who started Shutterstock, became an investor. And, I have a lot of investors. I have almost 40.
And they're the who's who. Like, I want to go to a party with your investors. Can we do like a yacht party somewhere, Saint-Tropez? Because they're all hanging out there in the summertime.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm, hoping we get to a place where we can do that, a little retreat. And then more recently, the last time we raised money, we brought on Andrew Rosen, who's a pretty big deal in the fashion industry, and Springboard. So I think Springboard Growth Capital, which is Amy Wildstein, Lori Watts, and Kay Koplovitz.
Yes. Incredible women.
Incredible women. So they came in our last round. I love them. They've been so supportive, so great. Who else am I forgetting?
We share an investor, you and I, with Lyndon Lee.
That's right. Lyndon. Oh my gosh. How could I even?
Isn't he the most fun?
I love Lyndon.
Isn't he special?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah. So, and that was also pretty major. And yeah, we have a great list of people.
And what I thought was so unique, which I think the listener just needs to really, whoever's raising capital, most of these folks that have invested in you have invested personally. So they're not investing through a private equity fund.
Yeah.
These are, what I would call a friends and family investment, even though when we hear friends and family, we would literally think about like Aunt Susie and Uncle Jim, but that's not necessarily how friends and family works. I mean, it's literally the network of the people who like, know, and trust each other, who recommend each other to each other, and they're all friends. And that network helps open doors to the next person, who's the next person, who's the next person.
Absolutely. There are a lot of family offices that a lot of our investors are family offices, most of them. Also Kyle Fisher from the Fisher real estate family in New York is one of our investors, and he's pretty active. He has a lot of personal investments. But it's, and I would say early days, what I did too, I asked certain people that I knew could help me raise money if they would just be advisors. Because you want to go out with something and people want to know who's on board with this business, like who's behind it, who's excited about it, and before you have investors, I had a few people that I put on as advisors. I'm like, these are my advisors. And that really made a difference as well.
That was so smart of you. And so in terms of your day-to-day operating business, you're running the day-to-day, but you have on this hotline, this incredible group of mindshare, super successful, super powerhouse people surrounding you. And that is the way to forge forward, right? So I think my takeaways when I talked to you the first time and was so impressed was that, there are different ways to approach the need for capital. And this idea of going in and saying, hey, I want to show you my business plan. I'd love to get some advice from you and hear your thoughts on it, doesn't feel like you're asking for money. It allows you to share your vision. It creates space for you to tell your story and your reason for why in a non-threatening way without somebody hearing something and filtering through all the reasons why they don't want to do it before you've even had a chance to talk.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And that's the magic.
Mm-hmm. It makes a big difference.
It's huge. So how long ago was that you started the capital raise process, and how many times have you raised capital?
So I started that in 2011, and I launched Fleur in 2012. And that process, I've raised money 3 times. Although it feels like there was a point where I felt like I was always fundraising because it didn't come in all at once. I was, slowly getting checks from people, getting checks for, I felt like 3 years. But, because also people will tell you that they're going to invest, but that it's another thing to actually collect the money.
Perfectly said. Right?
Yeah.
And so you want to call them to the extent that you said, hey, you're going to invest, but you don't want to call them every day and look like a stalker. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you might be planning your business that, oh, well, I closed this amount of investment and planning to do certain things, but then it takes 3 more months to actually get the funds.
Right. So how long was it after you started your business that you paid yourself a salary?
Years and years. It was painful. I was paying myself off and on, but I think that was something that I do regret a little bit, that I would always put my salary last. So all the needs of the business, I was always thinking about, well, we need to pay for this, we need to do that. I'll just wait, I'll catch up later. But you can't really catch up later.
It's like vacation. It's like saying, I won't take one this year because next year I can catch up.
Yes.
And then realizing you haven't had a vacation in 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, for a lot of the entrepreneurs listening, they get this. So your advice being take the time now, take the vacation now, take the salary now, even if you think you can't.
Even if it's just a small, I was never going to pay myself anything close to what I was making before. But I think even just something, you have to carve it out and just make it a part of your payroll so that it's not optional. I think I didn't do that. I was like, well, I'll take it when the account's looking good.
Right.
Early days.
So walk us through your business today. I mean, how you've built your business is a lot of direct to consumer, right? I know you do quite a bit at retail, but it is your imagery. It's like its own fantasy land storybook, right? And that's such a trademark hallmark aspect of you and your brand is the imagery that you have and how you tell a story through imagery. And so it's been 10 years or 11 years now since you founded the business. Walk us through where you are as a brand today, what your business looks like.
Yes. Well, been 8 years. It was 8 years in November. But we're 90% direct to consumer. And that's how I started the brand. I started with only e-com, and then we added wholesale after. And now we've sort of, through the pandemic, scaled that back even further. And we have a store in New York, and we're opening a store in LA.
Yay.
Yay. And I like retail in the right locations. And I feel like our customer does want to come in and try things on. Before we had a store, people would just turn up at our studio all the time to try things on. It just got to a point where we just had to open a store. It just made sense.
Of course.
So I do like retail. But yeah, we are all in on direct to consumer.
And being in 2012 and starting a direct to consumer business is so cutting edge if we think about it, right? I mean, Facebook had been around to some extent, but Instagram, nothing.
Yeah. It started,
right? So
Instagram was like 2012 because I feel like I launched Fleur on Instagram, but it was early days of Instagram.
So how did you know to do direct to consumer then?
I think from my previous company, we were all about retail and we had e-commerce, but it was never a focus. But I think I just saw the potential there, and I thought about how I was shopping and how women I knew were shopping, and I just felt like this was the way to go. We had to be 100% just thinking about that experience first. And I felt like if I started with retail, I would get too caught up in the retail part of it and not put the attention that I needed to into the e-commerce experience.
And so did you build out, I mean, this is pre-Shopify. So what did you do? Did you build out your e-com store on?
Yeah, it was it was a Java-based platform that was proprietary to these developers we worked with back then. And it was actually like a very cool site. It had a lot of cutting edge features, and it was like you could hover and shop. Like the product information would pop up as you hovered over an image. And we had a really great mobile site. I used to do talks about our mobile site because we had all these amazing features. But what I found out through that was sometimes when you add in all these like bells and whistles to your e-com experience, that people don't use it and they don't appreciate it, and they just want to shop and they want to like do their thing, get through with their purchase. So the best thing that we ever did was move to Shopify.
I bet.
Oh my God. I was like, before, to make a change, you have to put in a ticket and wait for somebody to it was just this whole process.
Right. Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing.
And think of like you've built a business in the most difficult circumstances, and now you have all these tools available to you.
Yeah.
And so the sky's the limit, So your imagery, talk to me about how you see, because I think if those who are listening hop on and take a look at your website and look at your Instagram, I mean, to me, your like goose skin magic is in how you see women's bodies and how you communicate that through your design.
Yeah, I think the visual language of the brand has always been so important, and it's something that I'm very involved in. And I approach it sort of like design, where I have a vision and a concept, and you start piecing it together and getting the right people together. And it doesn't always work, but when it does and it's magic, you feel it, and it's amazing. So we do invest a lot in our photography and video and all of that, and more video. Like, honestly, we should be doing even a lot more video than we're doing now. But it's expensive.
So is it? Yeah, I bet.
All of it's expensive. Yeah.
Well, and it looks expensive. So
yeah.
It's whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Yeah.
So in terms of the last 8 years of building this, if you could go back at any point in time and make a different decision about something, is there something that stands out that you think, gosh, I pivoted on that and I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have gone left. I should have gone right. And I didn't know.
Well, definitely. I think everyone gave me the advice to narrow my focus with the brand, to do fewer things, to really just hone in on what I was great at. And I think I didn't want to hear it, and I wanted to just do this big thing. And I was like, people need to understand the breadth of the brand. It has to have all these things and so many styles and so many categories. It was a lot. It was too much to take on. But I did that for so many years, and only now we still have too much product, but even it wasn't until really this year that we said no more. We're cutting back on the number of styles that we do, so we can really focus on, there's only so much you can really focus on, especially with e-com. So many styles you can get behind and promote and shoot video and images and run ads. You can't do that well, you could, I guess, but it would cost a fortune. You can't get behind 100 styles at the same time.
Right.
So I think that was something for me that I kind of knew was the right thing to do. And then people would tell me that, but I didn't want to do it.
And so your learning from that was, did it hurt the company, do you think, in terms of from a revenue perspective, or you think it was just being too broad and spread too thin?
I think it did hurt us a little bit for sure. I think on every level, because for all those reasons, I think, also getting caught up in a wholesale calendar. So when you start doing wholesale and you get onto that calendar and you're showing a collection, that part of the business demands more. They're just like, it's not enough. I want to see more and more and more. And you could show 300 styles in one season and they will tell you it's not enough. So I think I got a little caught up in that. So it was liberating.
Right.
It was liberating to kind of say, we're not going to do that. And yes, because you think every style you're spending money to develop it, to fit it, to, produce it. And if you can't promote all those styles, then people don't even know you have them and they kind of get put aside. So yeah, that was one thing for sure. I also think, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I also think I probably could have raised more money earlier, and that might have been a better move.
Because you would have had more freedom?
I think I could have scaled a little faster, but I think I was afraid to be diluted more, and I wanted to really get the business to a certain place before I raised more money.
Yeah. I mean, that is a consistent tension for entrepreneurs, right? Between raising more capital, diluting your equity position, and getting diluted down to a place where you become or feel like you may be an employee versus an owner, right? And scaling really fast and then exiting versus taking the slower pace, slower growth through organic income and organic growth, but maintaining more of an equity position.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's really a right choice, right? It's a personal choice, and there's always risk in more time.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Because things can go off the rails, or competitors can come in, or a shipment can go, I had a FedEx freight shipment on its way, one of my largest shipments on its way to a big retailer, and the FedEx driver got in a car accident, and my entire container worth of product, was unsellable.
My God.
And then it becomes like, does insurance pay for this, or how are we making up these numbers?
Yeah, that's something that, you don't plan for. And then you're like, okay.
Right? There's always risk in time.
Yes.
Time is inherently causes unforeseen risk in a business, right?
Yeah. So I think that's probably maybe a little bit of a thing I'd do a little differently.
So in terms of your current mindset and how you see your business, is your business a friend of yours, or do you feel like you wake up every day and say, okay, who's going to get the attention, me, the husband, or the business? How does this work?
Well, I guess my business gets definitely the most attention for sure. But I think now I have more of a system, and I've carved out time for myself to do certain things, to take care of myself so that I'm in a better headspace for my business. And that's been a big change for me too, because before, earlier days, maybe I would sacrifice my needs and be exhausted and not take care of myself. And that's not the way to go. You can't sustain that and be happy.
Right.
So I work long hours every day. I put in the time for sure. But I do carve out time for myself to get myself centered.
Awesome. And do you have a mentor, female mentor support? I mean, Kay Koplovitz, she was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, is one of the most iconic, unbelievable powerhouse women I've ever known and met. So she's clearly a mentor to you if she's an investor. But do you have any female leaning mentors or female women that you lean on for either friends or just support for guidance? And
definitely. Well, my sister for sure, because she's a very successful entrepreneur and has built an incredible business. She's a restaurateur. She's my number one person because we speak every day. So she's somebody I go to for advice on business, on leadership, on how to manage my time. one of my closest friends as well. She works for Facebook, but she's somebody I think who's also through her time at Facebook learned a lot about management there. Like it's amazing what they do to train people there on the management side of things. So I often go to her for advice as well.
And what scares you? I mean, at this point, you made it through COVID, which is probably the most challenging year in business ever on the planet, right? And you've successfully come the other side and with a more successful business than before you even started COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people got to know your brand and you and your story by virtue of being home.
Yes. Yeah.
And we couldn't have imagined that at that time.
No.
And so now that you're on the other side of that, is there something that scares you that you wake up and think, oh, or you have any free fall dream experiences? Sweaty palms, cold sweat.
I guess our industry has become much more competitive, I would say, like much more competitive. There's so many brands, so many direct-to-consumer brands. And I think that was something I didn't really worry about so much before. It's not that I worry about it, but I'm just aware of it. And I think it used to be a much smaller pool of people who did what we do, or just in lingerie in general. And now there's quite a few. Every day there's new brands popping up. And I do think about that. I don't know. I want to keep scaling. So that's something I'm always focused on is growth.
And touching more people.
Yes. I'd be afraid if that slowed down in any way, but it has not.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah. But
how much do you know, how much can you recognize that fear is something that's your fear, but not reality? Like,
well, yeah, no, I know it's my fear. I mean, I have the proof that that's not the case. So, and I look at it every day. So
yeah. I think one of the gifts that entrepreneurs have is that sixth sense, right? That spidey sense that says, oh, I'm going to be worried about all these things that never happen. And we spend a lot of energy focused on things that actually never come to fruition, but it's just who we are, right? We look out on the horizon and try and imagine all the different things that could
happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've built an incredible business. For those who want to jump on and follow you personally or learn more about your brand, how can they do that?
Well, my Instagram handle is at Jennifer Zuccarini, and Fleur's is at Fleur du Mal NYC. Yeah. And then on our website is fleurdumal.com.
And is there any retail location? I know you have a New York store. Where is that located?
Yes. So our New York store is at 175 Mott Street in Nolita. It's Mott and Broome. And then in LA, we're opening at 519 North Almont Drive and Melrose in West Hollywood.
Excellent. Well, I cannot wait for your LA store to open, and I cannot wait to be back in New York so I can shop your New York store.
Yes.
And you are such an inspiration. And the thing that I want to remind those listening is, people invest in people that they like and trust. And your list of who's who sitting at the table by your side, rooting you on and having written checks to be part of your business vision really is a testament to the woman you are and the powerhouse you are. And you're a total badass. And I can only say I can't wait to watch your meteor continue to rise.
Thank you so much. I mean, you're an inspiration to me with what you've built, and I'm so happy that we connected and we're able to do this together.
Me too. Me too. And I hope any of the women who are considering becoming entrepreneurs or listening right now are tackling the idea of, can I bring this idea to life, and what does it mean, and can I make money doing it, and what is that path and how does it look? I think take the inspiration that Jennifer has said. She can do it, you can do it, and it just is one day at a time. It's one foot in front of the other.
Exactly.
And stay true to the mission and stay true to the vision.
100%.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to From Potential to Powerhouse, Success Secrets from Female Leaders with your host, Tracy Holland.